The last very, very worrying development is what's happening inside our Justice Department right now. There is a rolling purge that is happening right now. You are watching the FBI squeeze out anyone that was affiliated with the prosecution of the January 6 rioters. You are watching the firing of anybody that was associated with law enforcement actions against the president. And so the message is clear. If you're in law enforcement and you go after Republicans or you go after Donald Trump's political interests, you are not going to have a job. That would be worrying in and of itself. But there is something else that is happening. And that is early threats of law enforcement against opponents of the president. The new acting U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., sent a really interesting letter directly to Elon Musk. Again, Elon Musk is a private citizen. He can't pass a security clearance. But Ed Martin, the acting U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C., sent a letter saying it was good to work with the Doge team this weekend. We must keep all our American government employees safe. We must protect the American people's property. I recognize that some of the staff at Doge have been targeted publicly. That's true. Doge is apparently a public agency. If you are working for Doge, you have accountability to the American public. It is true that we are having a public conversation about Doge, about Elon Musk, about the people who work for him. He says, at this time, I ask that you utilize me and my staff to assist in protecting the Doge's work and the Doge's workers. Let me assure you of this. We will pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work and threatens your people. Let me read that again. Let me assure you of this. We will pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work and threatens your people. That's extraordinary. The political opposition in this country is allowed to try to impede the work of the majority party. We are allowed to publicly criticize the work of the majority ruling party. We are allowed to protest outside buildings. We are allowed to name individual government officials and criticize them for the actions that they have taken. But this letter from the U.S. attorney says that, be assured, we will pursue legal action against anyone who impedes your work or threatens your people. Online, there are many critics of Elon Musk. The other night, one of these MAGA trolls targeted a critic of Elon Musk. And he tagged Ed Martin, the U.S. attorney, in his tweet. He said, I found one right here, Eagle Ed Martin. Lots of stuff in his Blue Sky account as well. I'd look into him if I were you. He was threatening to hurt Elon Musk. Very unstable figure. This is a pretty mainstream critic of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. He's not threatening to hurt anybody, but he's a pretty regular critic of Elon Musk. That critic responds to this troll, and then guess who shows up posting? The U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. He responds to this MAGA troll. Thank you. for the information. Noted. That's extraordinary. That's a law enforcement issue with the power of arrest and imprisonment. Posting on a thread that includes a very loud, visible critic of the president, Elon Musk, that he's watching him. He's watching him. Coming on the heels of a letter that says, "Let me assure you, we will pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work or threatens your people." Now, even if this critic doesn't end up getting arrested, because there is no claim that there is anything that he has done, as far as I have seen, that would ever rise to the level of an arrestable offense. He is just a critic of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Even if he never gets arrested, the chilling effect of a U.S. attorney telling critics online that I'm watching you, that is authoritarian stuff. And it has impact, because this particular individual is not going to stop criticizing. But plenty of other people, faced with a vague threat of federal investigation for their criticism of Doge, will stop doing it. And I wouldn't blame them for it. If I get threatened with imprisonment because I criticize the president, I won't stop. This particular activist will not stop. But it would be reasonable for many Americans, if they were trolled by a U.S. attorney on their Twitter feed, being told, "I'm watching you," it would be logical for them to just stop criticizing, as it would be for the recipient of federal grants to stop criticizing the president because they worry that if they do, their funding will be shut off, as it might be for any ordinary American to do, knowing now that Elon Musk has the ability to control whether they get a tax refund or not. Democracies don't die in an instant. There isn't this minute when dissent has been crushed so badly that we don't have fair contests in this country. It is a slow rolling death. And why Russ Vought to me is so dangerous is that he helped write the document that is the foundation of all of this attack on democracy that is happening. Put it all together. Information platforms agreeing to the terms laid down by the president because they fear retribution by the president. Political violence being endorsed and mainstreamed. People being told that if you engage in violence to support the president's power, you won't be held accountable. The message being sent inside law enforcement that you will lose your job if you pursue any law enforcement action against allies of the president, and the message being sent to critics that you will be subject potentially to arrest, at the very least to harassment, if you impede the work of the administration. Some people will not stand down, faced with potential political violence, faced with a cutoff of funds to their state or their agency or their organization, faced with the potential action from an unhinged prosecutor. Some people will not be silent. In Hungary today, there are still people who show up for protests, but never enough to topple the regime, because lots of other people just stay home because they don't want to get on the wrong side of the government, because the government decides where the money goes and where it doesn't go, because they don't want to be subject to an arrest warrant. We're not there yet. We aren't. We aren't. But we have never had a series of developments like we have had over the last 2 weeks that pose such a significant threat to our democracy and to democratic norms. And so the reason that we are on the floor tonight, the reason that you feel this urgency from our side of the aisle and from the American public is that we used to think that we were in this together, Republicans and Democrats. We've always had a difference on this philosophy of where wealth and power should accumulate. I think Republicans broadly have believed in this idea of trickle down. They have not believed as much as we have in supporting the middle class with programs like Medicare and Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. That's a legitimate political disagreement. And if that's what's going on, then the country will survive. But if there's a seizure of spending power by the president, if the president gets to decide by himself which agencies exist and which don't, well, our democracy doesn't recover from that. Because what goes around comes around. Today it's a Republican president seizing spending power. A Democratic president will do it as well. And then all of a sudden, the people aren't in charge. One person is in charge. I thought that we all were in that exercise together. The defense of the Constitution, the defense of Congress's rightful prerogative to decide how money is spent on behalf of our constituents. What Donald Trump is doing is putting Congress out of business. I think I heard Senator Schatz saying something like this as I walked in. I don't know why you work so hard to get a job like this. If you're just going to outsource all of your power to one man. It's not easy to become a United States Senator. Most people spend their entire career fighting to get this job. You got to do kind of ugly, distasteful things like sitting in a room raising money for hours on end in order to become a United States Senator. You have to give up all your weekends. You spend less time with your family. Why go through all of that? If you're comfortable with not being in charge of spending, of endorsing the violation of the Constitution and the enshrinement of spending power in the hands of one person, there's really nothing left to do here. There's a lot less to do here if we don't decide how the taxpayer dollars are spent. But even more worrying to me is that it seems like we are getting out of the bipartisan business of caring about democratic norms. I am heartbroken that a lot of people I like and respect on the Republican side didn't stand up to the president when he pardoned the guys who entered this building and beat police officers over the head with poles. I'm even more heartbroken that many of my Republican colleagues endorsed it. And I don't understand why my Republican colleagues don't see the ways in which this seizure of power could be used for corruption, could be used so that the executive branch gets to shower favor on individuals and entities that are loyal to the administration while punishing individuals and entities that are not loyal to the administration. I'm heartbroken that my Republican colleagues don't have a problem with what's happening at the DOJ and the FBI. If you're an FBI agent and you investigated the people who attacked the Capitol, you shouldn't lose your job, and we should all be outraged over that. Not just because they were doing their job, but also because they were investigating a legitimately illegal action. Come on. We can't agree that the storming of the Capitol and the destruction of the Capitol and the attacks on police officers are out of bounds? Political violence is a real thing. We have had colleagues on both sides of the aisle that have been irreparably injured by would-be assassins, from Steve Scalise to Gabby Giffords. I'm just telling you, the temperature rose in this country when all of those rioters were let off the hook. So this is really important, that we raise the alarm as to what is happening in this country. You need to pay attention to the things that matter, and you need to understand the story. That story is about the wholesale transfer of power and wealth from average people to the billionaires and the millionaires. That story is about the destruction of democratic norms in a way that may be irreversible, if not abated, in the next few weeks or months. Russ Vought is the architect of those plans to erode our democracy and to transfer wealth to the very powerful. He does not deserve to be the director of the Office of Budget and Management, and I am very glad and proud of my colleagues for being on the floor all night